Good day and welcome to this podcast, Future of Insurance Industry Leaders. I am really thrilled and happy to welcome Stacey Brown, founder of InsurTech Hartford. Stacey, welcome.
Hi, Denise.
So Stacey and I've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last few years with the whole InsurTech movement, and I've attended a few of the InsurTech Hartford events, and we've met up at InsurTech Connect and other industry events. Stacey, why don't you give a little bit of background on yourself and what you are doing at InsurTech Hartford around innovation?
Sure. Stacey Brown here. I have been in the industry for about 18 years now and, working for only two carriers throughout that whole journey. And I'm still there. I still have a full-time day job working for a large global carrier. But about 3 years ago, I started seeing all the trends that were going on with InsurTech and innovation. And I felt I wanted to be a part of it somehow. And there was a ton of resources that we had in Hartford. How do I engage with all that? And nothing was going on. So I just started InsurTech Hartford. And the early days for InsurTech Hartford was all about disruption, right? It was, I call it the disrupt days. It was we were really heavily focused on networking, and, we were running hackathons and trying to bring people together to come up with new ideas and make new connections. But now we're, over these last 3 years, we're kind of more into, I want to use disrupt as the main word. It's more about build now, right? And it's about, driving innovation through community activation, whether it's helping to continue to build the ecosystem around the greater Hartford area, helping transform culture within carrier communities, as well as helping grow in the startups and working with the startups as well. And even our organization has grown and matured where we used to do just networking events and hackathons, now we're doing an annual symposium. We have the Innovation Challenge that, as of now when recording this podcast, is actually in flight. So that's turned into a global event as a result of COVID-19. We were originally planning it as a regional event, and now that everything had to go digital, we said, why not make it a global event? So we're really been able to grow our contribution to the InsurTech innovation space.
That's fabulous. InsurTech kind of came on the scene. It was starting to come on the scene late 2015 when it separated from FinTech. Early 2016, the industry just kind of like took a pause on everything because they weren't sure what this InsurTech thing was going to be all about. And everybody thought it was going to be kind of, it's going to be like the .com. It's going to have a real strong interest and then it's just going to bomb. And it's not bombed. Now, while due to COVID-19, investments are going to probably take a pullback for a period of time, it really has impacted the industry. And to your point, I think the initial thought was it was all about disruption, but I've seen so many different benefits that they've really brought to the industry that has really forced us to kind of think things differently, particularly taking an outside-in approach from a customer perspective. What benefits have you seen and the value that InsurTech in general has brought to the industry?
Well, definitely it's caused everyone to stop and look at the customer because the customer's needs are also changing because the customer demographics are rapidly changing, right? You got boomers coming out, you got millennials coming in, and so there are different expectations in every aspect of how we live and how we work. So, those millennials that, maybe people were thinking, oh, these are college kids, right? College students. They're actually in the workforce. They're in management positions now. They're getting up towards 40. They're making home decisions and they're full on decision making adults in our business community. So all those changes, all that stuff was driving the changes. But I think some of what we're seeing is some of the new innovations where things like the concept of insurance not being time bound and being usage bound, right, and having to be available 24/7 because that's somebody just might need to do a policy change at 3:00 in the morning. People have that expectation now that they should be able to. So I think InsurTech has been helping us on that journey and keeping up with the times, and it's become so important. Innovation itself has become so important in our industry that we even see like AM Best picking up on it, incorporating it as a part of their rating process. And so, all the large carriers at this point have some form of innovation going on. The value is, also addressing, I think the InsurTech movement has also helped with talent gap to some degree. A couple of years ago, that was a big thing that people were talking about. And I think it's still a thing, but I think InsurTech has been helping with that as well. So, if you look for how did a specific innovation make a difference or create value, sometimes there's winners and sometimes there's losers. But when I look at what's been happening over the last few years, and to your point, all the way back to the spinoff from FinTech in 2015, I see that there's been a lot of value created in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And your comment about AM Best is really quite relevant, related to what you started off with. That InsurTech was really about disruption. And it was really a disruptive focus. And, it's kind of moved into an operational focus. And I think AM Best has really brought that back to the forefront with their rating, because really one aspect of the rating is really looking for operational innovation. What can you do to your existing business today to make it much more conducive to your customers and innovative to some of the market demands? But at the same time, thinking about what's your business of the future going to be? Because that new buying segment, to your point, the millennials and Gen Z, they have a whole different kind of demographic and a set of expectations. I mean, they compare us, we often joke that it's about Amazon, but quite frankly, they're comparing us to like a Netflix also. When you look at that and you think about what's the future of insurance going to be, fundamentally our operating model, let alone our technology, has to change, because we can't just assume the business processes are going to be the same with this next generation of customers. And so when you think about the future of insurance, what do you see insurance leaders leading and doing to kind of respond to that future that's different than our past?
Well, I think, leaders, they're always working with one leg in two different canoes, right? There's the run the business and the change the business. And the run the business is, keep the cash cow running and doing what it needs to do, while change the business tends to be, more future oriented. And, there's always that shareholder pressure about performance. You're only as good as the latest quarter and things of that sort. But you have to be strategic. And I think now is, with all that's going on with COVID and the economy, I think now is actually a really great time to show leadership, right? It's a great time to double down. There's that saying about investing where you should be buying when others are selling and selling when others are buying. And
Warren Buffett
yes,
quote.
Yes. I didn't make it up for sure.
It's a Warren Buffett quote. Absolutely.
So I think that's the opportunity that's in front of us now. So leaders, some of them are increasing investment from folks I'm talking to. There are companies out there that are actually increasing. Maybe what they're choosing to spend on is the profile of that might be changing a little bit, but it's all about speed nowadays. And so they are seeing the opportunity and they're going after it. And then there's the more laggard groups that are out there that are just, they want to be innovative. They want to say that they're innovative, but they want to see that the innovation is going to be a proven business case first, the show me the money approach. Yep. And I think of folks like, in terms of leadership, I think of folks like what Paul Tyler has been doing at NASA Re, where, he's been working really hard at helping InsurTech, building out an incubator there, but it's actually helped his own company a ton in terms of branding and recognition in the industry, as well as using that to help drive cultural change internally. Not that I know too much about what goes on inside the four walls of his company, but that's some of what I'm hearing. So there are leaders that are out there, and they're taking the risk, they're investing the energy, and they're investing the time and the capital. And that's basically what I've been seeing, Denise.
I think there's two things that you said that really, I think I would just emphasize, and love your opinion. It's this whole concept of speed. The speed that we have to get new products to market, the speed to kind of create new kinds of experiences, anything around with regard to the business, so that we can really respond to the changing dynamics in the marketplace. That coupled with leaders versus laggards. I think in the past we thought that, well, we could kind of wait. We could kind of see what those leaders are going to do, those people on the leading edge or those rapid followers, because we can always just put additional resources to it and we can catch up. I think the combination of speed and how quickly things are changing and the dynamics of the marketplace, I think those that are waiting to see really risk their business for the future, because that gap between where leaders go and themselves and the amount of resources that it's going to take to try to jump that gap is huge. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's things like API is no longer an option, right?
Exactly.
It's not even a differentiator any, you know, it's a standard, right? Like everybody's got to have it. And speed is all, you know, digital is all about helping with the speed of things. And that's where you see a lot of innovation happening as well, is, you know, how do we streamline, how do we become more digital? And this, again, I keep referencing COVID-19 just because it's so prevalent right now around us. But there's been a lot, I hear a lot of people talking about how the old processes and manual processes are standing out like sore thumbs right now. Things
Oh
that
yeah.
require wet signatures and seals, right? It's like, you know, people have to run to the post office and they, you know, they're mailing stuff to each other's houses and stuff. And, you know, it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where one of the really interesting things that came out of InsurTech is this concept of ecosystems and how we could be partnering with some of these InsurTech startups that are providing different kinds of innovative capabilities or different kinds of data sources, and how we could really integrate them through dynamic APIs, to your point, and creating this concept that we don't have to build everything in the four walls of our companies any longer. And that partnerships can be really interesting partnerships with a wide range of capabilities. And I think that that is yet to be really tapped into yet by most insurance companies, because they still don't really quite know how to manage that and to work with some of these insurtechs to get them to do the paperwork for all of the security and all of the stuff that typically corporate America wants is just overwhelming, that I think that we don't quite know how to work with them yet and really leverage the real potential of that. What's your thoughts?
I think it's definitely a thing, but I understand both sides of the coin. And it's one of the interesting things with working both inside a carrier, but then working closely with the entrepreneurial community. There has to be safety and controls in place, you know, because there's a lot of assets under management and there's a lot to lose if something goes wrong. When you're a startup, you've got really nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, you know, you're a lot more willing to take risks. So I kind of see that, you know, playing out in the real world. So it is a thing. And I don't know that it could ever be solved, because here's the thing: if a startup is lucky, they grow and they become a legacy company, right?
Yep.
And then there's some other startup wondering why they're so big and they're so slow and all that kind of stuff. It's just a cycle.
Yeah, well, I do see some companies taking a little bit more risk at, trying to work through them. Obviously, there's needs to be safeguards, but maybe not the same level of safeguards that, if you're going to be working with a big, established big tech company as an example. And so it's kind of like, managing it. If you're only doing it for maybe an MVP product, that's different than trying to do it for a whole portfolio of products as an example or whatever, kind of being it as the usage of it expands.
Right. I think some organizations have been, trying to define fast paths through some of that stuff, right? Where they start to look at, what's the size of the risk here? We're talking tens of thousands of dollars contract, not tens of millions of dollars contract. Do you really want to put the same degree of rigor around it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make as much sense, right? When they start looking at it in that context, there are organizations that do look at it that way. They try to balance their own resources because otherwise you're bringing in a cannon to kill a fly too.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously there's a little bit of a downturn from the InsurTech investment for this first quarter that we've seen in the news as compared to the previous 4 to 5 years, primarily due to financial impact of COVID-19. What are you beginning to see interest in InsurTech Hartford with regard to investment in some of the startup? Do you see that this may be a slight pause for a few months and that it'll accelerate again, or what do you see?
So I'll say more generically rather than just specific to what's going on around Hartford. I think there are sources of funding that have dried up for capital, as well as, a lot of the startups are working on a lot of experimental and discretionary projects with carriers, and some of that's getting hit pretty hard as well. The startups are getting squeezed on both ends, but there are other investors out there that are looking at it and saying, back to the Warren Buffett thing, right? Buy when others are selling, sell when others are buying. And so there are still people out there, Like I spoke to Mass Mutual Ventures recently, and they're still aggressively looking. They've got more intents to grow their portfolios, what I'm understanding. So, it's not all drying up and going away. But I think the hard part is startups selling to insurers. So if you want to talk about what insurers are investing on, I think, like I said, a lot of discretionary projects are getting, from what I'm hearing, are getting slowed or getting closed or deferred starts, right? So there's some rough seas ahead for startups that are selling to insurers. But when it comes to the startups like the Lemonades of the world that are like the brokers, the startup insurers or the startup brokers and MGAs, I think there's still opportunity out there for them, right?
Yeah.
There's still a gig economy. There's still, all these things that need new insurance solutions. There's new emerging risks, and that's still out there, right? So I think they are probably going to see less of an impact from this than those people who try to, sell to insurers.
Yeah, the capabilities, the technology, and the data. Yeah, I also think that it's also because of that, particularly for the technology InsurTechs and the data InsurTechs, there's the potential of some merger and acquisition activity, as they begin to get squeezed too, that there'll be a little bit of a consolidation. And then that may then, as we come out of this, kind of have a new flurry of new activity.
Absolutely. And I think the next time around is going to be different too, right?
Yeah.
So, there's like the Gartner hype cycle is what I have in my mind, that curve, right? Where it spikes real high, then it drops real hard. And then you come up the slope of productivity or something like that, they call it. And I think that's where we're going to be heading after this, right? It's not going to be as wild and crazy maybe as it was before, but it's not dead, right? I think now we're going to start seeing, more strategic alignment through M&A, as you said, and there's going to be new value created through synergies from things like that. And we're going to continue to see this, investment in InsurTech and in insurance grow to the extent that it's helping the industry become more efficient and more productive.
I wrote something recently, a blog, and I talked about how, out of the .com era and then after the financial crisis and the introduction of InsurTech 5 years ago, and now out of COVID, every one of those kind of major events to different degrees and for differing reasons, we come out of that with something interesting and new across the marketplace, let alone in insurance. When you think about coming out of the financial crisis, that's when the iPhone was introduced. It was right around that same time. And think how it just kind of accelerated this whole kind of new digital businesses. And then out of that came Uber and Airbnb, and out of that came on-demand insurance. So I think coming out of this, there's an opportunity for some real innovation based on the new kinds of risks that we've identified as a result of COVID and the way that people want to interact with us. So I see a lot of good coming out of it actually too.
Absolutely.
So when you kind of think about insurance and InsurTech, where do you see the industry over the next 2 to 3 years, Stacey?
I guess it depends on where you're looking at it from. I think incumbents are, they're going to continue focusing on the OpEx side of the house, right? Because there's where there are hard business cases, it's always easy to get the money on the inside. Well, easy is not necessarily the right word, but when you have a hard business case, it's a lot easier to get the money versus, things that are about, hey, if we do this, we can generate more new business, which tends to be a little bit more speculative, right? So I think those OpEx projects and investments will, that help reduce those manual processes and forms and data entry and things, I think will continue to be a focus. And then regulatory efficiency as well is something that I know in some states they're looking at themselves and saying, how do we become more efficient? We know there's all this stuff about the black box rating engines and stuff like that, but let's look at our own operations and what do we need to do to become more efficient. And I think incumbents are also going to continue to need to be flexible and responsive to market opportunities, right? They need to be able to build and test and deploy and market at high speeds. I don't know, maybe somebody who's good at that. Anybody that knows a thing or two about rapid build, test, and deploying?
Yep, that's kind of one of the areas that we've really focused in on with some of our customers in InsurTechs, because that's the way it is. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think startups will continue to have the luxury of not having legacy. Over the next 3 years, I think we'll see a lot of these companies continue to scale. They're continuing to be faster at meeting the needs of the customers and understanding the needs of the customers. And to your point, the iPhone didn't exist 10 years ago, but now nobody can live without it, and there are entire business models built off of that technology. So there's going to be some kind of new entrance, coming up in the next 3 years. If I knew what that was, I don't know if I'd even say it, but I think we're going to see something really disruptive really soon.
I agree. I totally agree. It's going to be a really interesting next couple of years to see how all of this kind of unfolds. So if you could pick one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would that be and why, Stacey?
Okay, I think it's opportunity, right? I think
love it.
There's new markets continuing to expand and grow in emerging markets. There's new customers as the millennials are coming into their own now. There's new technologies and advances in different technologies. Things like edge and computing and quantum computing are going to take all this AI stuff to levels that we can't even think about. It's going to start to be, the future is now for darn sure. There's new talent as well as a result of all this InsurTech stuff, and that's creating lots of opportunity of what's possible. And there's more data. There's more data now than ever before. And the funny thing about it is we'll have twice the data in a year or two from now. So there's tons of data. There's new customers, new markets, new technologies. If you put all those things together, it equals opportunity. I remember, I think it was maybe around 2017, Matteo Carbone and Andrea Silvello wrote that book. They said all the insurance players will be InsurTech, right? They were right. Everyone's going to be InsurTech now. You have to be digital. It's table stakes now.
Yep, we're technology companies that happen to sell certain kinds of products and services, and it's a different world.
Yep, it sure is.
Yep. So, well, Stacey, it's been a great conversation. So appreciate your leadership, your forward thinking with the work that you're doing at InsurTech Hartford. Look forward to hopefully sometime in the near future being able to attend a face-to-face event and have a great conversation face-to-face.
Well, thank you, Denise. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience. Hope you enjoy this podcast with Stacey Brown, founder of InsurTech Hartford. Thank you.